Hello and welcome behind the virtual curtain. I'm George,
And I'm Justin.
and today we're going to be discussing something quite important, actually, which is why virtual events still matter and what most people get wrong about them. Because most people seem to think that virtual events are effectively glorified Zoom calls, but they're not. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Everyone always says to me, well, it's just another Zoom call. No, if you're practicing the techniques and you're working through the process correctly, it's not a glorified Zoom call. It's a lot more than that.
It's a way that you can, above all else, push sales and you can be communicating with your customers in a much more intimate way, which allows you to have the conversations that matter not only to them, but to you as the person who is servicing those users, making sure that you're providing the service they want. And more importantly, they're paying you for it and are happy about it.
Absolutely. And the other thing I also wanted to address in this episode is the idea of, are virtual events dead? I can tell you, spoiler alert for later in the podcast, the answer is no, but we're going to get into that as well.
Yeah, but before we kick off, I guess it's worth us introducing ourselves a little bit. This is the first episode behind the curtain, and so let's go behind the curtain, I guess, and talk about ourselves. Um, so I guess Justin, as the long time Grey Duck Studios founder slash employee, give us the rundown.
Yeah, so Grey Duck Studios, we have been doing this since COVID. Literally March of 2020, when the economy shut down, we started figuring out a way to run virtual events. Found a framework and a system that really works. We ended up developing our own software platform, which I had never done before, and is something quite crazy to me, really, is that really in just a matter of about a little less than 6 months, we were able to launch a working software product and really develop a strategy and started gaining clients such as the Land Geek, Rail Passengers Association, um, God, Mecklenburg County Bar. We've worked with other speakers who I unfortunately can't talk about because of NDAs, but we've done a lot of it. So that's a little bit about me. George, what about you?
Yeah, just on NDAs, I'm one of those people who both love and hate NDAs because I think NDAs are a good sign that you're working on interesting stuff because the really interesting stuff is the stuff you can't talk about. But it makes my job harder because I want to tell people about all the amazing stuff. But that's just how it goes sometimes. Anyway, I'm George. Justin and I met. What was it? 13 years ago now. I've known you for quite some time. Um, addition to the Grey Duck team, but I'm happy to be here. I primarily come from an advertising and tech background, so I used to work at a digital innovation agency. And I'm currently in project management. So um, I love getting stuck in on both the technical side and the communication side. The way I often describe myself is that I'm sort of the translation layer, if you will, between technical and management. And so this is the kind of thing that is great as someone who, even if you yourself know that virtual events are important, but you don't know how to convince your boss or someone else on how to do them, you can go to them and say, hey, listen, this is why it's a great idea.
Absolutely. And I love how you said that like you're kind of that in between of communication and tech. And that's how we see ourselves here at Grey Duck too, is that really our job is to really make it so the client doesn't have to think about tech, doesn't have to worry about all the technical mumbo jumbo that goes into, you know, some of our clients don't even know what the words API are. And that's our job to know that and be able to decipher that for them. So I'm excited to get into the first episode. I've been looking forward to starting a podcast for a long time, and I know this is going to be a great podcast.
Yeah, and just going back on that translation layer thing again, for you and I, we're both quite technical people, and we enjoy that stuff. But if you are a business owner who owns a small business, or even just someone whose role it is to do the marketing for a larger agency, and you don't care about the technical stuff, that's, as you say, that's what we are here for. It's our role to be the ones who are sort of going between the technical side and yourselves, so that you can focus on the thing that you do enjoy and the reason you are doing it, which is running a good event and connecting with your customers. You don't want to have to worry about, does my Zoom link work, as my camera turned on, like, all this stuff is stuff that we help you with, so that you can deliver in confidence the best version of your event. But since we're here, tell me, Justin, what is the state of virtual events currently? How have we been?
They are fan freaking tastic. They are doing so well, and they continue to grow every single day in so many ways that, I think rewind time back 6, 7 years ago, back to 2019, 2018, we would have never had. And not to say thank you to the pandemic, but thank you to the pandemic. It really did shine a light on the power of virtual and how much more potential there is in the landscape of virtual events versus a era where everyone wanted in person and everyone was like, "You gotta get back together, gotta get back together." If a virtual event is done right, it can be just as powerful as an in-person event, and I stand by that 100%.
Yeah, I think you're right. As you say, it's, if a virtual event is done right, it's a balancing act. I think one of the other things the pandemic did is that it accelerated the sort of the work from home space. I personally primarily work from home, and there are days where that's great. There are days where I have to be like focusing on something, and so I just sit at my desk, headphones on, stare at my screen all day. However, having the time and space to meet with people physically can be a powerful thing. And so it's all about balancing that appropriately. You don't want to be hosting these physical events so often that it becomes an inconvenience for all of your customers to come out and see you. And on the converse of that, you do want to every now and again, go for a coffee with someone, make sure that you're having those connections. But as a first port of call, as a step one introduction, this is the way to do it. Running a virtual event lowers that barrier of entry. Anyone can come in, and even if they only have a couple of hours, if I'm in London and you're in Toronto, I can still join in. I can still come say hi, understand what you're doing. And if your product and your business resonates with me, we can have that conversation still. We're able to meet people that we never would have been able to meet before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really does open a landscape. And also I look at it from the side of sales in that, like, okay, I'm sorry to the people that love in-person events. I'm gonna kind of poke at in-person events here for a second. But, if I have an in-person event and I'm hosting it in a hotel, in a standard hotel ballroom, there's a capacity limit on those things. You have to have a hotel block, you have to a room block, you have to have catering. Usually it's locked to having to use the hotel for that. You have to put a capacity on it. You have to pay for those materials. You have to pay for travel. It's a lot that goes into. So if you think about your ROI on an in-person event, it's a lot lower than a virtual event, because guess what goes away once you flip to virtual? You don't have a hotel room block, you don't have the catering, you don't have the ballroom with the capacity limit, you don't have to rent out AV equipment. All those things that were holding you back from hosting an event, maybe because you genuinely couldn't afford it, it becomes a lot more affordable now in the virtual space.
And on top of that, if you can afford it, It gives you the capacity to provide experiences that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. For the same amount of money that you can run a okay physical event, you can run an incredible virtual event that will have a much higher return and will leave all of the people who come to the event feeling like they've just experienced this really amazing thing. You can offer goodies if you want to sort of, send out like goodie bags, or you can have guest speakers that you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. There are all these things you can do that you can reuse that budget, and it's not just about, as you say, whether or not you can afford an event. It's making the most of the money you do have, so that even if you only have a little bit, every penny you spend is being pushed as far as it can to maximize that return on investment.
One of the crazy things is the differences are tech and touch. 80% of your event, it's exactly the same. But that 20% is tech and touch. You just have to master the difference between what stays the same and what is that 20% that you need to just, it's not even change completely. It's just tweaking, you know? Once you tweak it, it works. And we know it works, and we've seen it work time and time again.
Yeah, and it also lets you do interactive things that in a way that isn't, so often I go to physical events, and there everyone has a QR code they want you to scan. Everyone has a business card they want to hand you. And there's all this information that's coming at you in sort of all these different forms, with different levels of like efficiency. And if someone just gives me a business card, I might put it in my wallet, I might not. And even if I do, at some point it's going to end up on my desk, and then I go, oh, I don't actually care about this, and I'll throw it away. If it's digital, you can sort of streamline that whole delivery process, and you can make sure that it's sort of everything gets highlighted not only at the right time in the right way, but it's the same as if you saw a link on a poster versus being able to click it on your phone. No one is going to go see a poster, type in the website, and then click go and then see the thing. Whereas if they're on a digital event and you say, hey, if you want to see how this works, just click this link right here. All they have to do is that one click, and they're immediately looking at what you're trying to sell them.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is that easy. And especially, and I'm sure we'll get into it in future episodes, not to promote our platform, but our platform really does make it easy. And it's the click of a button, and your offer is now front and center on a dashboard where your attendees can return to at any time. And it can be timed live to the timing of your event. It's not something that you just set on a timer. You can absolutely do that, but you can also have someone there, and we do it with our clients a lot. We will have someone in the pitch room, and on go, we click the button, and within 2 minutes, that offer is now live.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, George, I really want to get into going a little bit further behind the curtain and how things really work. So, I've been doing virtual events a long time, but I think there are things people overlook when planning and executing a virtual event. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. There's sometimes it's the big stuff, but it's very rarely the big stuff, is what I would like to say. There's a saying that goes something to the effect of no one has ever like stumbled over a mountain, in the sense that if it's a very big problem, if there's a very big technical hurdle, or whatever it is, we all see it coming a mile away. We all know that you need a camera, right? For example, what you will fall over, however, are the smaller stones, the things you don't think about on a normal day-to-day basis. Things like lighting, for example. A lot of people think, well, I just get this really nice camera, point it at me, and that's done. But there's so many things that go into making all that work.
Right. And I want to stop you there because it's something I preach a lot to clients in that they think, oh, I need to run out and buy the most expensive camera on the market. You don't. And we do this exercise in an event, in the virtual event blueprint, where we literally, I take a computer and I show you, just with a laptop that is over 10 years old, how easy it is to get myself into Zoom and be presenting on stage. And I'm not using anything, I'm not using fancy microphones, I'm not using any fancy programs. It's literally just the camera built into the computer.
Yeah, it's about understanding the limitations of the technology you have and leaning into them and really sort of maximizing what you have. And it goes back to that ROI thing, right? If you're spending $10,000 on a really fancy camera, that's $10,000 you now have to make back up again before you even break even, you know? And if it's only 5% better because all you really needed to do was to have a nicely bright room and a better background, then that's $10,000 that you've effectively wasted, right? And so it goes back to that ROI question and making every cent stretch as far as you can.
Exactly. And, I think one of the things that I come back to is, we have a client who was very, very eager to tell me he bought Ecamm Live. And if you don't know what Ecamm Live is, it's essentially OBS, but for the Mac. It's a Mac version, it's paid, it's a really good program. It's actually what we record the show on every week. He was so excited to tell me about it, but the one thing he didn't know is the learning curve. And he was so busy focusing on things that didn't matter, like learning Ecamm, that guess what suffered for it? His content. The flashy stuff is great. I love the flashy stuff. But if it's at the price of content, is it really worth it?
Yeah, the flashy stuff is like the sprinkles on the cake, you know. It can make a nice cake, it can elevate a really nice cake that little bit higher, but if the cake is already terrible, no amount of sprinkles on top is going to make it magically good. And so once you've mastered the basics and once you've really gotten the most of everything you already have and you understand it very well, that's when you take that next step and go, okay, now we can up the production quality. We've run virtual events, they've all been successful, we're converting, we know what we're doing, and we're now going to take the next step.
Right. And it's really that simple. So, George, to give them some takeaways, some things to think about. If you were planning a virtual event, where would you start?
I'm glad you asked, because by complete coincidence, we happen to be running a free event. There we go. So the Blueprint Build Day is a one-day event that allows you to learn all about how you could build your own virtual event blueprint, basically. It's a one-day thing, it's free, and you know how we were just talking about how virtual events mean that you can get access to information a lot more easily than having to like scan a QR code? There's a link in the show notes. You just have to click it, type in your information, and you're immediately signed up. You'll get a reminder on the day, and it'll even add it to your calendar if you want it to.
Yeah. And if I can hit the right buttons, we practice what we preach. The systems we're using are the same systems that your favorite creators are using as well. Mark Podolsky at The Land Geek, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson. They're all using these exact same tools. And we're using the same formulas, the same processes. So if you really want to get a handle on how to lay the blueprint, this is the event for you. It's about a 6 to 7 hour day. It's going to be from 11 a.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern. It's a full day, and that's by design. We want you to walk out of that event feeling like, I got this. I have my blueprint. now ready for the next step.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed day. There is so much going on in it. And you'll come out of it, being completely honest, a little bit tired. You'll go, wow, I've learned so much. However, we will give you all of that information. Everything that we know will be passed on to you. And that will be your first step into running an incredible virtual event.
Yeah, so that's where I would start is attend Blueprint Build Day. Get your blueprint. Let us help you build your blueprint. Like we said, it's free. And George, can I tell them a secret?
Go on, do it.
Okay. I'm only going to tell my 8,000 closest friends. Congratulations, you're one of them. If you register for the event, there is an option to upgrade to VIP for $27. I will tell you right now, we are not giving out recordings to Blueprint Build Day. I'm not doing it. But VIPs, I like you because you guys are committed. I'm going to give you the recordings for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, you can go back, rewatch the event. And I was thinking there's probably one more thing I could throw at them. How about a bonus Q&A at the end of the session? An extra hour just to ask your questions. But that's only going to be available to VIPs.
Yeah, that Q&A, not at all. And in fact, the Q&A is actually probably the most valuable part of the whole thing, because that's where you can ask us stuff that's most important to you, right? We'll spend the whole day talking about the virtual event space as a whole and how to set up a virtual blueprint, as a concept. But if you want specific information, or if there's something that you kind of understood but aren't fully grasping and want a bit more information on, you can ask us directly.
Yeah, because newsflash, we're going to be in Zoom. I know we said it's not just another Zoom call, and the ironic thing is we dump you in Zoom, but we're going to be able to see you. We're going to be able to talk right to you. It's not like any other event you've been to before. How many of you have been to those events where you can see and hear the host, but the host can't see or hear you, and all they're doing is interacting with you through chat? I don't know about you. I hate events like that. I love chat. There's a time and a place for it. But there's something way more powerful about being able to look you in the eye and you getting to ask your question directly to me or directly to George and us actually be able to have a conversation with you. It's one of the things that actually, can I tell the story, George?
Go for it. We met, no, we met on a former live streaming platform called Vocal, which is long since dead, but allowed you to. It was effectively Twitch before Twitch, really.
And the feature that really was the game changer back then, and they really were ahead of their time, was the ability to bring people up on screen. You could request to ask a question on screen and talk to the host. That alone was game changer, and that's essentially what we're doing with Zoom.
Do you want to know? So we were talking about how the worst form of digital event is one where they're basically just talking at you, right? So that person is sort of talking and you're just sat there listening. I recently attended an event that was actually one level worse than that I didn't think was possible, which was they had a live host who was basically emceeing and throwing two pre-recorded video segments. So only, but there were, but it was like 30 seconds live, followed by 25 minutes of pre-recorded video, and then 30 seconds of and now coming up, this is the next interview, and 25 more minutes of pre-recorded video footage.
You know what? We're going to have to do an episode on that because that is That's a whole other can of worms, and that is definitely a topic we need to get into at some point on the show because it is worthy of its own topic for sure.
Yeah, so if you want to hear us talk about stuff like that, make sure you come back next week for another sneak peek behind the curtain. I've been George.